Yo, what's up, man? Hector here, strongestech.com. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the kettlebell front squat, the double kettlebell front squat, okay? And this is a continuation of our common kettlebell mistakes series. So, kettlebell front squat, pretty important. We want to have a strong press, push press, jerk. We have to have a strong front squat. So this is going to help set that solid foundation for many of those exercises that follow that clean position. And getting a good understanding of the rack position is going to help us with our press, so on and so forth, okay? So, because essentially, all a kettlebell front squat is a rack position that moves up and down, right? So we want to make sure we have a solid rack position. We're not going to go too much details into the rack position. That's something for maybe another video. But what we're going to be covering is just the 5 common mistakes that you might be making. So if we want to have strong exercises after the clean, we need to make sure we hammer out the squat and make sure that that is solid, all right? So without further ado, 5 mistakes you're making with the kettlebell front squat. Let's get started. All right, so mistake number 1 when it comes to doing the front squat, just like we talked about in the kettlebell swing, is foot position and setup. So a lot of times guys will clean the bells and sometimes they just start squatting from right there. Now, I want to address, so we're going to use the goblet squat to kind of address and kind of find that foot position for our squat, okay? So, everybody's hip structure is different, you know, and they're not all going to look the same. Some people can squat with their feet straight ahead, some people can't, some people have a wider squat, some people have a more narrow squat, but I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit of a few of the differences. So, the closer your feet are together, the more hip mobility you have. The further apart your feet are, the less hip mobility you have, okay? So if I have my feet pretty wide, so let's say I like double kettlebells, right? Like I clean the bells from here, boom, I get to the rack position. If I don't move my feet, and I've seen this with several people, and they do very well. From here, they just start squatting from this position. Now, if I start squatting from this foot width, like this is all the hip mobility that I have. Like this is it. I can feel myself kind of running into myself, okay, in my hips. So I've seen some guys have a wide squat and they get pretty deep. Okay, everybody's different, but generally, the wider the feet, the less hip mobility you have. Why should we care about that? Well, the deeper we get, the more stretch we get out of the hamstrings and the glutes are firing. We're getting like different types of activation from the glute depending on how deep we go, okay? So essentially you kind of get a full stretch of quads, hams, glutes, that kind of thing, okay? So I would like to get as much of that as I can to have a really good squat. The closer your feet are together, let me move this kettlebell out of the way. The closer, right, so we've already shown wide stance, right? We just cleaned a pair of, double kettlebells. And then from here, if we start squatting, I run out of room. So I'll turn to the side. You can see wide stance. From here, as soon as I start squatting, like that's it. Like, that's all the room that I have to get down. The more narrow my stance is, right? So if I'm here and I bring it in like a step, okay, and I'm pretty close to like hip width, more or less, the closer my feet are together, the more hip mobility that I have. So I can almost get like my butt down to my calves, right? So if I turn to the side, more narrow stance, I can almost get my hamstrings to sit on my calves, right? Because I have a more narrow stance, right? So you kind of have to find the hip width that works best for you. So for me, what I like to use and what we've used with many of our students to find that hip position And to find the right foot position is to use the goblet squat. So again, you don't have to squat with your feet straight ahead. When I squat with the way my feet look, I look like Fred Flintstone. Like some of them, my feet are, one's going this way, one's kind of going a little more 45 and beyond, all right? So what we want to do is we want to find that squat from the bottom up. We want to learn the squat from the bottom up to find our setup. Why? That's the way we first learned how to squat when we were 9 months old, right? No one is ever walking around and there's a baby's not walking around and squatting. They have to learn from the ground up because they can't walk, period, right? And then if you want to go back to like caveman days, the deer or whatever they killed wasn't perfectly hanging in a tree so they can get under it, pick it up, etc. They had to be able to get down, then they'd get it up and then squat it up. So we want to learn that squat from the bottom up because that's actually how we learned how to squat, okay? So you're going to use your kettlebell. And so mistake number one is you just clean the bells and you just start squatting and not really establishing a good foot position. So what I recommend here is kind of getting into this like posterior rocked position, right? So you're just sitting back like so, okay? So what you're going to do here to find that foot position is you're going to put the bell right underneath your belly, kind of like underneath your belly button. All right, so I'm going to turn back this way. So what I'm going to do here now is now that I've got the bell underneath me, I'm going to step up 1 foot at a time. Boom. And the bell's going to be pretty much in between my feet, like right underneath my hips. Okay. Once I have the bell there, I'm going to lean it forward. From here, I'm going to grab it right where the handle meets the bell, the horns. I'm going to grab it here, and then I'm going to pull it up. So now I'm in the bottom of the squat. And what you're going to do here is get your feet straight in the beginning, and then just kind of like move your hips around and just kind of find a comfortable position, what feels comfortable, and just kind of move things around. Okay, a little bit of prying, a little bit. Okay, and then put the bell down and stand up. So for me, this is the optimal foot position. Based on the structure of my hips, you can see, kind of look like Fred Flintstone, right? They're not perfectly straight ahead. Okay, so once I got down and then I kind of moved things around, they got into that optimal position for my hip structure, okay? So that's what I recommend. You get comfortable with identifying what that is for you. That way when you clean the bells, you'll be a little bit wider if you're using doubles. You'll clean them, you'll bring your feet in, and then you kind of find, as you do this over and over, you'll find that foot position right out of the gate, okay? So mistake number one is not addressing the setup and not finding the foot width and foot position. And I like doing that with the goblet squat, getting down there, learning from the bottom up. That's how we've been breaking down this whole entire series. Everything that we've been breaking down is from the bottom up, okay? Mistake number two that you're making with the kettlebell front squat is spilling your hips, disconnecting, and essentially back squatting your front squat. What does that mean? What does that look like? So Brett Jones talks about this idea of spilling your hips, spilling your pelvis. So imagine that your hips are like a bowl, and in that bowl you got water. And then you have your midsection. It's like a cylinder, and that cylinder is over the top of your hips, right? So if I'm set up here and I'm solid, I just cleaned the bell, I'm in the rack position, and my first movement is this. Like you can see here, like I just completely disconnected. So if my hips were that pelvis, I spilled my pelvis. And now the water's spilling over. So what that would look like is you're here, you're in the rack, and then your first movement is this. See? Boom. Disconnect, and then my arms come forward. So I'm back squatting, right? Back squatting my front squat. And when your arms are becoming disconnected from the body. Remember how we talked about in the clean and in the press video? What do we want to do with the bell? Once we clean it, what do we want to do? We want to become one with the kettlebell, right? We want that bell to be right along the side of our ribs. If we're going to be in the press rack, we kind of want to find that exact same position here. And we want to keep that position throughout the movement, okay? So I'll show you with one bell. I'll show you with two. So I'm going to turn this side here, show you what we don't want, what we do want. Okay, so I set up. Okay, what we don't want is that right there. Losing this connection and then spilling at the hips. You see that? We don't want that. We also don't want to be like this. I've seen guys front squat like this. No. We want to maintain connection. We want to maintain this connection here. Once we get it racked, we want to maintain that connection, okay? So here's more or less what we want. Keep the connection. And notice, I'm not kicking my hips back. My goal is straight down between my feet. Okay. Hopefully I was able to demonstrate that. My midsection stays connected. And it's just boom. See? Boom. I lead with my knees. Don't lead with your hips. Talked about the clean. Don't lead with the hand. Lead with the elbow. For the front squat, we're leading more with our knees. So, racked, my knees lead the way. If you're doing a barbell, like a low barbell back squat, like a powerlifting squat, then you'll lead more with your hips, but you'll maintain this cylinder. You're not going to disconnect that. That will still stay the same. Okay, so leading with the knees. And so here's 6 o'clock, right between your feet. Your hips, you're kind of shooting for like between 6 and 7. Like you're sitting on a curb. All right? So you're going to clean. Keep the connection. And then try to drop straight down between your feet. Okay? So I'm going to do this. Let me take my little watch off. We're going to do this double bell now. So what we don't want, so you're going to notice my feet a little bit wider to get the bells, but then as soon as I clean, got to bring my feet in just a little bit. So what we don't want, okay, see, that disconnection. We want to maintain connection. Okay. We want to maintain that in tight. One way that you can practice that, you can get a piece of paper. You'll obviously need to do this with one bell. Clean the bell up, get like a sponge, piece of paper, something that you can kind of smash, hold, and then from there, squat. If you drop it, you obviously know that you're becoming disconnected, okay? So that's mistake number 2, spilling your hips, disconnecting, and back squatting your front squat. Mistake number 3 that you're making with the front squat is just collapsing down into the squat, right? You clean the bells, and then it's just dropping all the way down and collapsing. I did a video on this a few years ago. It's kind of hard to do by yourself, so I try to demonstrate it using the kettlebell. You get a light bell. So actually what we want to do here is we want to use our hip flexors, the muscles that do this, right? Imagine you're sprinting, right? And you got to pull your knees up. We got to use our hip flexors to actively pull ourselves down. That creates space in the joints, gives us more mobility, okay? So I use this with the light bell. I hooked my foot inside the bell like so, and then I just use that to like pull the bell up. And I'm just trying to mimic this like pulling with the hip flexors. So you can think of this as, once you're in the rack position, you can think of it as you're trying to squat down, and then someone's like behind you with their arms underneath your like underarms, and they're trying to pick you up. But you're trying to fight that force. So you've got to actively pull yourself down. So you're going to notice when you do that, a couple of things are going to happen. You're going to have complete control over the descent, okay? You're not going to lose balance. You're going to have complete control of that descent all the way down. You've probably seen powerlifters do this a lot. They get out of the bar, right? They get out of the rack. They're tight. They take their deep breath, and then you see them just kind of like, it looks like they're going down really slow. They're not intentionally trying to go super slow. What they're doing is they're actively pulling themselves down into the hole. That way they can come up, okay? And that's what we want to do there. So it's going to give you more control over the lift. And if you're like, just for me, if I'm front squatting 24 kilos, it's easy to get away with not doing that. But once we get to 32, 40, and even double 48 kilo bell front squatting, you're going to need to be dialed in, and you're going to make sure that you're pulling those bells down, pulling your body down. Okay? So we don't want to drop in. We want to actively pull down. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like without pulling. Then I'm going to show you what it looks like with pulling. You're going to notice something interesting happen. Okay? So the first one, I'm just going to kind of drop down. But I'm going to drop down under a little more control. But then I'm going to show you what it looks like when I pull all the way through that full range of motion. Okay? So I'm going to control it a little bit. I'm not going to be pulling as actively, but I'm just going to control the descent. Stop, where I'm going to stop, and then come up. Turn a little bit more to the side. So you see where I'm at. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hip flexors, pull down, and then at the bottom, I'm going to keep pulling. And you're going to see something interesting happen, okay? So here we go. Pull, and then keep pulling. Right here, I'm not done. I got to keep pulling. You see that? See how much like deeper that I got? Regular pull, and then I kind of stop. I got more. So from here, keep pulling. So I kind of eke out a little bit more. So when you actively pull, gives you control over the descent. And then you keep pulling, you get a little more space. You create a little bit more space in the hip, and you can get a little bit lower. Really getting that full stretch out of the glute, hammies, opens the hips because you're creating that space. And then you work on your ascension. So mistake number 3 was just kind of collapsing down into the hole, no control over it. You're leaving mobility and in turn strength on the table, okay? Mistake number 4 you're making with the front squat is not pausing at the bottom of the hole and then losing pressure at the bottom. So keep in mind, everything that I've been covering in this series, one, like I said, for over a decade, I've noticed these mistakes, and I've violated every one of these, all right? So just know that I'm not making these videos like a know-it-all. These are mistakes that I've made. I've made every single one of these, and then I've seen these over and over with our students and what we've seen at SFG certification. So just know that I have made all these mistakes too. And the one that I'm going to cover right now, I've probably made the most often in my squat. Because guess what? Front squats are freaking brutal. They suck. I mean, they're good, but they suck. I mean, if you want a set of like a brick wall for a set of abs, man, the front squat it's hard to beat. Okay, but man, it's tough, right? It's brutal on the body. So, not pausing. So it's kind of like you're getting down, bouncing in and out of the front squat. I've done that. And losing pressure. What does that look like? So here's what it looks like. Here's what we want. A little bit of what it looks like, the mistake, and then after that, a little bit of what we want. And actually kind of did some of it on the last mistake. So mistake, here we go. Kind of bouncing in and out. Or if we do pause and then letting out our pressure at the bottom. This is crucial if you got a heavy load. Right? We under control. We do pause, but then we go kind of let our air out. We lose that pressure, and then we try to build the pressure back up. Okay? What you want to do is just try to keep that pressure the whole time, because you're not going to camp out in the hole, right? You're not going to sit down there and have coffee. You're going to come down under control. You're going to pull yourself down, slight pause, ascend with the grunt, and you're out. So when you get down, keep pulling, slight pause, use your breath to get out of the hole. So here's what we want. Keep the pressure. Okay, so active descent, little pause, keep the pressure. We're not getting down there and then, because you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to do that. Ask me how I know this. I was on I think it was the Genesis program in Double Kettlebell Manifesto. If you want to check that out, I'll leave it in the description below. I was the Genesis program, which is heavy presses and front squats. Brutal combination. Man, when I get to those dang front squats, there was a part where I got to sets of 6 front squats. It's like, who the hell programs sets of 6? When I got down there, when I was on like squat 4, and I think I was using like a pair of 40s for the, I'm not bragging, but this was the pair I was using. And dude, when I got down there, it just felt like I needed a breather, right? So I got down there and I almost used the hole like a rest position. Like I got down there because it's like I knew that like things were starting to burn, and I was like, man, if I get down there and just try to get up right away, I'm probably going to lose the bells out of the rack position. So I got down there and like just kind of like relaxed, repressurized, and got up. That's not something you're going to want to do on a regular basis, okay? So again, I'm telling you these things because I've made these mistakes. So control the descent on the way down, slight pause, don't lose the pressure, initiate with the grunt, and come up, okay? That's mistake number 4. Mistake number 5 when it comes to doing the double kettlebell front squat is breaking your 3-point structure. We talked about this in the swing video. Breaking your 3-point structure. There's a 3-point structure also in the squat, but it's on the ascent. So what's the 3-point structure with our swing? Our ankles, the knees, and the hips, right? We don't want any shifting, any breaking of that. The front squat is more like knee to upper body. So the 3-point structure of our front squat is knees, hips, shoulders, okay? When you get down into the hole and you start your ascent, your hips and your shoulders, your knees, they should all ascend at the same time. We're in the squat. It's not hips first and then coming up, right? It's not like moving our knees forward and then coming up. We want our knees, our hips, and our shoulders to ascend at the same time, keeping that 3-point structure intact. So show you what it looks like and then show you what we want. See, my hips kind of led the way, and it broke that 3-point structure. Okay. A lot of the times when that happens, we're either weak in the midsection or our quads aren't very strong, and so our hips ascend first, and we kind of like almost deadlift out of the position. So what we want is everything at the same time. See? Everything at the same time. Knees, hips, shoulders come up together in one unit, not breaking that 3-point structure. Okay? That's it. That's all I got. So quick recap. Mistake number 1, not taking time in the setup, finding your foot width, foot position. I like the goblet squat, doing it from the bottom up because that's how we learn how to squat. Mistake number 2 is spilling your pelvis, right? Disconnecting here, and back squatting your front squat. Mistake number 3 is just collapsing down into the hole, no control whatsoever, and we're also leaving mobility and strength on the table. So we want to actively use that active negative. Check out that lesson I did where I'm kind of using the kettlebell as an example, but you can also try to imagine someone behind you like pulling you up, okay? Or like you put your arms in like rubber bands, right? Like jump stretch bands, then you rack, so the bands are trying to pull you up, and you're actively pulling down against them. Gives you, right? Hopefully that gives you like a mental picture, okay? Number 4 is not pausing. It's kind of bouncing in and out of the squat and then losing pressure. Maybe you're controlling it to the bottom, but then when you get to the bottom, you're just kind of like letting it out. And you're going to want to do that because it's hard. The front squat's really hard, especially once you get to heavy bells, right? When you get into, if you're a lady and you're getting to like 20 and 24 kilo bell front squats and you're getting up there in volume, it's hard. Guys, if you're getting up to 32, 36, 40 and beyond, it's just really freaking hard, okay? So your body's gonna wanna relax there for a moment. Try to fight that, okay? And the mistake number 5 is breaking the 3-point structure. Your knees, your hips, your shoulders must ascend together. We don't want your hips coming up first or anything like that. Must come up together. And these are also, FYI, these are standards of passing the Strong First certification. So if you're going to the SFG and your hips are ascending, that's a fail. That's one of the standards. If you're not grunting on the way up, if you're not pausing and showing control, okay? If you're spilling your hips and disconnecting, all these things these are part of the standards. Not all 5 of these are, but there are a few of those standards that are inside these 5. And if you're failing these just because you see somebody like, oh, I see the way this person is squatting, so I'm going to emulate that. You got to be aware of these. And that's another reason why I'm doing this series, is to help you out so that way you can avoid some of these in case you have aspirations of doing the Strong First Gita certification, okay? So that's it. That's all I got for this episode, this lesson. If you're digging the videos, just be sure to subscribe or what have you, so you can. We've got several more coming in this whole common mistake series. If you want if you're looking for programs around the squat and around to learn how to kind of, now that we have the techniques together, now that we know what we're doing, and you need like a structured program, we've got a free ebook out there. Some really awesome programs that many people have used to train for the Strong First certification. Okay, so if you're looking for a program, we've got our free ebook, Kettlebell Workout Snacks. I'll drop some of those details in there, and I'll even drop a link to Double Kettlebell Manifesto if you're looking for a really aggressive and something to challenge you, press and double front squat cycle. You're definitely going to want to start with the Genesis program, and we'll put some of those details. You can check those out. But appreciate you watching, and I will see you next week. Hector, strongashheck.com, with this week's Common Kettlebell Mistakes series for the week. Done.